In June of 2022, I was introduced to something horrible.
The whole Olympic Peninsula
is due for a catastrophic magnitude 9+ earthquake.
And along with that comes a tsunami,
which would leave much of the West Coast very severely damaged or just plain gone.
There is a subduction zone off the Washington and Oregon and British Columbia coasts is overriding or underwriting the North American plate.
I wanted a way to improve people's odds.
So how can we connect? How can we find more mouths? How can we find those skills and those people that are hidden, and we've not met yet?
A huge earthquake is coming. 1,000 questions come to mind. But the biggest one is, how do you even prepare for that?
American 2938, clear to land 1 left.
2938, runway 1 left, clear to land.
Thank you, clear to land 1 left, American 2938.
American 1018, wind 190 at 6, runway 1 right, clear for takeoff.
Go check up 1 right, American 1018.
American 830, last base start, runway 1 right, line up away.
Line up away, 1 right, American 830.
Landed in Bellingham, Washington, to meet with Mr. Doug Robinson, to start finding answers on my journey.
So, a little bit about this airport and what happens around here is the San Juan Islands are the highest concentration of millionaires in the U.S. because they all have island homes, so getaways. The only way you get there is ferry or plane, and a lot of them will land their small jets here, and then they'll take off and go over to the islands from here on a smaller commuter. There used to be a lot of mills, and that was the industry, and that was fishing, logging, and agriculture, because in fact, the origination of Ferndale and its community or its identity after the trees, old-growth trees were taken away, it was about growing the berries or the citrus crops that would grow in this climate for the ships that hauled coal and lumber from this area. So obviously fighting scurvy. So Ferndale's identity is really about food, which is coincidental with Vertical Food Network. We're going to go by some of the past industries, kind of relics from the past, which, Bellingham now is mostly about, I would say, the colleges. So there's Bellingham Technical College, there's Whatcom Community College, and then there's Western Washington University, and which is, I think a branch of it is Huxley, which is an environmental college, and the origins of the Earth First people. Groups, and we're notorious around the world. So yeah, very big environmental type of interest in our community. I helped them locate a pole peeling plant on Vancouver Island back in about the year 1990-2000. Whoa. So that introduced me to international business. So it was a really interesting project, learning how to get money back and forth across the border as well as products, and that really introduced me to a lot of Canadians and Canadian business. So another little weird sideline to my career. Now we're coming up on our right on what used to be Talbot Industries. I think they've sold out now. Bellingham Cold Storage is what it's called, that they're unloading fish that'll be processed inside of the cold storage here. It's a major industry in Bellingham.
So that's where all our seafood is coming from.
Yeah. The big agriculture in here, there's the berries, so there's strawberries and raspberries. There's the fisheries, and there's seed potatoes and big dairy. We have 2 oil refineries and 1 aluminum plant. The aluminum plant was shut down, and they're just talking about reopening, and they were big thing was getting cheap power. And so anyways, they're negotiating to reopen it. So you're going to see part of the harbor. So we're going to go by. This is where a lot of private boat owners take their boats out and have the repairs because it's a really big pleasure boat area. It used to be a big. In fact, right back here, they used to manufacture minesweepers for the World War II. So there's been a lot of boat building. In fact, my family was related to the Berg family that had a shipyard in Blaine. So a lot of and Uniflight, was a huge fiberglass boat manufacturer, and I think they had a big fire and they kind of went out of business after the fire, but they built the boats that fought in the rivers, the Mekong Delta and Mekong River in Vietnam.
Whoa.
So now this is the commercial fleet. So this is where the seiners, a lot of which winter here, and they'll go to Southeast Alaska during the summer. Commercial fishing isn't that big around here. It's a pretty good sized boats. Dungeness crab business is fairly big in this area.
Whoa.
So there's a lot of guys that'll have lockers here to store their equipment. You can see they got nets out, they're getting ready. Those red brick buildings high up on the hill there,
Yeah.
that's Western Wash University. There's about 14,000 students on that campus. Interestingly enough, this just came out recently. There's 4 food pantries on that campus, and they told us that 50% of the students are food insecure, meaning they're hungry every day. That's 7,000 students, and they got 4 little pantries, about the size of your closet in your bedroom, to serve that many people. So we're going to help. So we don't have to be the experts at getting it to all the communities, but we have to be the experts at collecting it and getting it to the people that have it. Let them do this. Kind of came from, and I made a little YouTube video of my experience early on when I was just doing trunk loads, and we started to find the produce that was stuck in a cooler next to the border, like it was supposed to go to a cruise ship. And so, because again, one of my directors lives down in Ventura, California, been getting food from Nogales, New Mexico food bank. And this was food crossing from the Mexican farms to a cooler in Nogales, and it was destined to go to Kansas or up to Toronto or wherever. And if it was held too late, or it was a little, going bad, or the trucker didn't show up, whatever the problem was, so they were taken to landfill. And so I thought, well, since he was collecting that type of food, I had a kind of a reference to how that worked and how much it cost to get it, how much it cost to distribute it, how long you have, what was waste. And so from there, that's when I started looking up here, since we're close to the Canadian border. Similar problems, customs or whatever, interferes with that flow of food. And so there might be something we can get our hands on. Well, sure enough, because kind of after the first visit to one of those big cold storage places, we get a call, said, hey, we got two pallets of these special gold plums that were supposed to go on a cruise ship, and they can't make it across the border, can't make it. You want them? I said, I'll take it. So then I call up this guy that I just started with. It's a different story, I'll tell that one later. I said, hey, you think this was just one guy in the neighborhood named Scott Jensen. He was a little noisy on social media. Everybody thought he was a nut job, but I saw where he was making up sack lunches for his wife to take to work, where there was a homeless encampment in the woods. She would give out sack lunches. I thought, well, aside from not liking any politician or corporate officer, he does do something good. So I went and saw him, and when we first went to his door, kind of, I'm kind of a little bit of a shaky looking operation. I hear these big dogs barking, and he opens the door, and here's this weedy little guy in a wheelchair with two Great Danes looking me down, and behind him was a whole wall of cast iron cookware, and I thought, now this guy knows about food. Nobody has a wall of cast iron there. So we got to talking, and long story short, he says, yeah, if you brought more food, I would send more food out in the neighborhood. I'll cook up the meals, I'll do whatever. Gives me something to do. And he needed something to do to quit barking on the social media. So anyways, I called him up. Here we had all these golden plums. Well, yeah, Doug, bring them over. I'll get rid of them. So well, I don't have that many mouths, so I'm going to do that. So by golly, if the next day he lets me know, it's like, yep, all the plums are gone. But, that's pretty good. The same day I already talked to him, got rid of the plums, and they called me again and says, well, Doug, we got a pallet and a half of boxes of kale, organic kale. Full. It's a big box with organic kale in it. It's like, so can you come pick it up? It's like, well, yeah, I think so. Let me make a call. I called Scott and said, well, what do you think? Can you move the kale? Well, bring it over. Let's give it a try. So go get the kale, bring it back. 12 hours. That kale was gone, and that was the most amazing thing. Who could find a home for a bunch of organic kale? But again, the groups, the people that were following him and supported him, they were the ones that stepped up and helped him do this. And it's like, well, there's an interesting way to distribute more food instead of trying to, like food banks and food pantries, be that location to everybody has to go there and only the hours that are open. To instead taking it to some person that just has a passion for helping his neighbors, wants to do it, doesn't have enough to do, let him do it. And so remember, that's now what I look for in any community I go to. It's like you'll have passionate people that want to help their neighbors. They need something to do. Here's an example of get some pallets of orange juice, and we just hey, we'll move it tomorrow. We'll start moving. This is an example. This was going to the landfill. This is all vegetables that are packaged here, but there's someone that checks all the labeling to make sure it's accurate to go to Japan. And so they pull samples, and they weren't just throwing them away after they checked the labeling. Wasted food. But again, we're talking perishables, right? So that's what we do. But we don't like my model is we don't store. So I'm always checking them while here because the orange juice just came in. So that'll go all out tomorrow. You'll see that. So some of our partners, again, are collaborators. It's like the Salvation Army, Skagit Gleaners, there's another group down in Snohomish County. But we're always trading stuff. So we even, like Christmas trees, we got 80 Christmas trees donated last winter, and because they arrived after Christmas. So no market, so they give it, so anybody want them. Well, now this year, we'll do community events to help other communities affected by floods do a Christmas thing, but they don't have to buy anything.
See, that's cool.
And then, hey, that's a way to meet people, right?
Always.
The point is, we're using food to meet people.
So my name is Doug Robertson. I'm the president of Miracle Food Network, and I'm the founder of this organization. It's different these days than the startup days, but I just make sure that we have volunteers that are having a great time and they want to come back, and so that's my job. Well, it started with a concept back in, probably back in 2013 or 14, and a friend of mine in Ventura, California was rescuing food from Nogales, New Mexico, taking it to Ventura, California. And I kind of learned what he was doing. And so as we talked, the idea occurred to me that, well, if you could do it there, could we do it here where I live in Whatcom County? And so as the time went on and it matured, and and formed Miracle Food Network, and I think it was 2016. And we looked at different ways we could start it, and then an opportunity came up in Bellingham with another organization. A friend I knew that said, hey, I got a grant to rescue food from restaurants in Bellingham, and I don't know where the mouths are. And I said, I think I can help you there. I think I know where the mouths are. So that's what started Miracle Food Network, really just working from some vehicles, personal vehicles, and just experimenting with how do we collect the food, and then how do we package it, and how do we get it to mouths.
You'll probably hear this from almost everybody who volunteers. We are providing such an incredibly important service to people who are in need, and it is wonderful to be able to, whether you are putting food together or whether you are delivering it, it's just a wonderful sense of value that you're providing to people in general. It's just a wonderful thing to do.
There is a lot of food waste in the United States. Millions upon millions of pounds that are being wasted. Last year we did 1 million pounds that was saved from a landfill.
I've just witnessed, people that by circumstance, sometimes not by their choice, they get separated from resources that could help them when they really need it. And I thought, as I understood what was available for essentially free, what was being wasted, and I thought about what's in surplus that we could redirect to help those that are in that circumstance and they need a nudge, a help, poke or prod, but it was something that I felt I could do with the time I had on my hands, and it just it feels good to help your community and help your friends and neighbors.
All the people that work here are volunteers, every single one of them, and it is something that virtually anybody can come be a part of if you have time. Either one day or many, come and be a part of it. It's a very short window of time that you volunteer, and there are so many things that we need, and so please come be a part of that if you can't, and you can provide some financial support. Miracle Food needs financial support all the time as well. So yeah, anything that can be done that can help us do a better job, all the better.
When I started with Doug almost 2 years ago, he was doing around 35 to 40,000 pounds a year. There's families out there that can't get to food banks, but we deliver the food to them.
It's personally very rewarding because it's grown, much greater than I could have ever imagined. And to see, people that come engaged and bring the passion themselves. It's not like I have to light their fire. They come with fire and they want to do things to help. And, it grows organically beyond any of my expectations. And, I get to be a part of it.
I started doing this a lot last week for community service, but it kind of turned into me enjoying it a bit more than I thought I would, so I definitely plan on coming back after those hours are done. But I don't know, it's been a fun experience. I was kind of searching around, didn't really know where to go for community service, and I didn't really see anything that I really saw myself doing and enjoying.
We try to recycle everything. So if we get fruits or vegetables in that can't go onto a table, it goes into buckets and our pig farmer picks it up and it is fed to the pigs.
I was addicted right off the bat when I knew and saw what they were doing and taking food that was otherwise go in the landfills and feeding, tens of thousands of people, even in a week. They feed so many people, so I just got obsessed right away. And
I actually only found out about it through my husband, who happened to walk by one of the drop-off locations where you go and pick up, and he just says, hey, check this place out. So I looked it up and found it out. The person that he had walked by no longer did it, so I was like, where's the pickup location? Because we didn't need it at the time, but I knew people who did, so I was trying to get them connected. That was about three and a half years ago.
Well, certainly COVID has done something I had never expected, and it launched us into, things that I could not have predicted or expected, particularly when we found that, so many, families and people were in isolation, were cut off from resources, And, again, because of our volunteers, we could act quickly to help them. And so now that we've kind of established some routines and how this works, we can explore other things that bring community, that connect us. How can we connect? How can we find more mouths? How can we find those skills and those people that are hidden, and we've not met yet. We want to treat everyone as an equal. I mean, and often, if you go back in history and you look at those in bread lines and soup kitchens, and their head is down. And, there's this sense that because you have to stand in line at a soup kitchen, that your self-worth is, been, just taken away from you. And so what I want to do with Miracle Food Network, and I think, the people around us want to do is we want to say, this is a place where we're going to explore your skills. Food happens to be the connector, but, it's meant to really find those skills and nourish those skills. That's a core value of Miracle Food Network, is really to say, everyone has a skill of some sort. So let's explore that. Let's help that blossom. And so that's, really a core value of Miracle Food Network, is to, have people, treated fairly and give them opportunity where they thought maybe they didn't have any. So we're in Ferndale, Washington. It's a function of where I live, so, it's nice and close. So we have, started to look, elsewhere, because, again, people in our network, talk about their experiences, and other people ask us if, well, why can't we do it where we live? And so, I know Los Angeles, Southern California is one of the places that, we're exploring right now, and starting to do a few things there. But again, this is organic. We're not a promoter. If people want this, they see something that they want for their community, then that's what we want to support them doing. We all have these hidden skills. We don't know our neighbors well enough to know what those are. So, with so much food in excess, it's quite easy actually to take a cake, a pie, or an ice cream over to your neighbor and start a conversation. And that's what, I hope that Miracle Food Network starts a lot of conversations where we had none before.
When I started, I was only going to be a volunteer for a couple hours a week, and I'm one of his full-time volunteers. And without the 100+ volunteers we have through the week, none of this would be possible. They show up every day, with a different group every day. We have drivers that show up every day, and the volunteers are huge. The amount of volunteer hours, if you put it in dollars, is about $3 million worth of volunteer hours we have.
So we take food from our community. We have drivers that pick up food in the community. And the food we're processing today comes from the Bellingham School District. It's a food recovery program, so the food that doesn't get used there comes here, and then we repackage it and it goes out into the community. We get food from grocery stores, local farms. Flax for Life is another company that donates muffins here on a regular basis. I started volunteering here in December of 2020. I was looking for ways to help in the community safely. I knew there was a need for food, so I started volunteering here. At first I made soup, and I brought soup here to go out to families, and then I found out more about Miracle Food Network and what their purpose and their mission was, and it kind of interests me, and I like the group of people that I work with. It's a really good group of volunteers, so I keep coming back. I got to do some deliveries for my own family's school district, and it's pretty rewarding to see like the full circle of where the food's going and how you're helping people in the community that really need it. I have kind of like visions of maybe the people that we serve helping at Miracle Food Network. I think that would be pretty powerful if if we kind of gave them a place where they could help out and give back to the community that helped them. But I hope it keeps growing, and I hope all of the wonderful volunteers that work here continue. It's really a good thing.
But it's been a fun experience so far. I don't know, it's been very educational, and it's been nice to kind of help the community and build a community here.
Miracle Food Network understands that it'll take more than food banks to get food to those who need it most. But with damage from the coming earthquake, no volunteer or food can reach those who need it most with ground transportation alone, which is why they joined Sky Terry and DART and Thunder Run.
Basically, the West Coast is due for a catastrophic magnitude 9+ earthquake that could go, 8 to 9+ for 4 to 5 minutes, and followed up with a tsunami, which would leave much of the West Coast very devastated, and a lot of the road infrastructure very severely damaged or just plain gone. In many communities, very isolated and turned into islands, either geographically water-wise or just tectonically on the land, also islands because all the bridges are gone. I wanted a way to improve people's odds, to help ensure communities stay connected and don't become isolated and essentially lose lives that were savable, and realize that the use of general aviation aircraft, water and land-based, has a unique ability, just due to the number of pilots and planes available, to really be that game changer, that life-saving resource, that hope from above, and developed a way to do that with a lot of help and a lot of collaboration of additional pilots and people that could see the value to develop what we are now, which is a collaborative West Coast, multi-state, and now international effort to use general aviation to fill the breach and buy us time for the regular resources to arrive when the worst possible scenario becomes reality. And in the interim, when we do have those moments where smaller areas do become isolated and they need the assistance, we can help at those times too. But we practice for the worst possible scenario, the big one. We started doing live exercises with seaplanes on Lake Whatcom in 2009, but I was working on it and basically trying to figure out how to use seaplanes in land-based aviation to help the West Coast. Prior to that, it's just 2009 when we moved up here that we started doing live drills on Lake Whatcom with seaplanes. And then around 2015, we got connected through EVAC to California, or CalDART network, and they are the originator of the DART program and the template. And we brought that up, and that's when we started doing stuff out of Bellingham International Airport, and Billiton Aviation Services was in 2015. So it over a decade of continuing to grow and learn from the prior drills, add that into the next drill, and just what's led to where we're going to move probably roughly 60,000 pounds total plus out of Bellingham and Walla Walla come June 18th. Because Walla Walla is our out of impact area hub, so when the pass highways go down, Walla Walla is a juncture point to pump supplies in and help the entire west side. So for June 18th, they've got about, I think, 17,000 pounds that will flown out of Walla Walla into Renton DART, and then on the Grays Harbor and Mason County. And also 10,000 will go into Oregon. So it truly is an historic first for aviation, where we move a whole lot of food into a whole lot of different areas with full ham communication and just a Berlin airlift and hope from above to keep those communities going and know that they're not alone, and there's sources and resources outside the impact area that we can make sure to get to them. The reality is I want to help people. I want people to have the best chance possible. And I've been fortunate enough to have connections to pilots and communities and aviation resources that can help and see a way to make that become reality. And so I feel if you have an opportunity to make a difference and to change things for the better, you need to. Can't just turn my back on people. And being, like I said, I live on the West Coast. It may very well be my own life or one of my children's or my wife that gets flown out or critical medication gets to us in the event of the real thing. So I live in Bellingham, Ferndale specifically in Whatcom County, and I'm, in addition to be the regional leader for the West Coast effort, I'm also the local leader for the Whatcom County EVAC DART. And it's an EVAC DART. Whatcom County is just in relation to what county we happen to be in. It's really led by Emergency Volunteer Air Corps and tied to the Emergency Volunteer Air Corps. And on June 18th, we will be moving roughly 30,000 pounds through this site. In addition to our own local food drive at the Lakeway Fred Meyers that we've been doing and the amount of food that we collect during that time period. And we will disperse that out to Point Roberts, Graham County, Jefferson County, Langley on Island County, and A.J. Eisenberg on Island County. And all that food will go into the food banks. We'll also send out a scout flight, red flight, out along the southern portion of Whatcom County where it joins Skagit County. And they will fly over also Highway 20 and onto Walla Walla. That is a critical component because identifying that the past highways are out gets to allow the fuel flyers out of Alaska and Canada to start seeking the permission to get the waivers to get down here and start moving fuel over the pass so we don't run out of avgas and Jet A, which is absolutely critical. Additionally, we'll have hams on site that will relay communications through all the final drop points and also the site up in Canada. That allows us to meter the flow out to the final drop points so we don't overload them. And we if they need us to stop or if there's a complication, we can adjust for that and maintain the flow and have it go smoothly. Basically, I'll be on the tarmac helping manage all of this and coordinate it with my co-lead Bob Weeks. And just trying to make sure all the food gets where it's supposed to go. A lot of food will also go to the Bellingham Food Bank and Miracle Food Network locally. So we're feeding 12 different plus food banks because some of those locations have multiple food banks, like Graham County I think has 4. So 12 plus food banks through this transition point in Bellingham International. I think the reality, it will probably be via our lifetime or my children's lifetime that you will see this used, and it will be needed, and it will be needed very badly. Without the pilots at the core of it, that we wouldn't have anything. They're the ones flying the runs, they're the ones putting their planes in the air, they're the ones donating a lot of time and money to make this a reality. All the ground crews, all the leaders, ham operators, all the ground support personnel, everyone that's partnered with us, we're paving a way for a better future. And literally the lives that will be saved will be in the thousands or hundreds or plus when the time comes. And it makes a difference. And it's made a difference through COVID because we've flown mass. The Renton Dart, what was BIFA before, now they've kind of folded into our effort and we're calling them the Renton Dart. But as BIFA, Boeing Employees Flight Association, they flew, I think, over 400,000 pieces of PPE throughout our state at the very start of COVID when the whole logistical system went belly up. There's hospitals that didn't run out of supplies because of them. GA has definitely saved lives through this pandemic and the critical delivery of supplies. So even though we've been practicing for our worst case, practicing for our worst case scenario, in smaller scale disasters, general aviation has proven to be very needed and very crucial and very much a life-saving resource. It happens every year on the East Coast. So everyone that has been a part of this, our state owes you a huge thanks. More people will be alive because of what you've done.
After sitting down with Sky, now it's time to fly. I tagged along with Mr. Dave and Miss Dava to learn the origins of DART and about the Clallam County area, one of the areas that's going to be hit hardest by the earthquake.
I was aviation coordinator for the county for many years, so back 14, 15 years ago, I wanted to get something like this started. They didn't exist anywhere, and I tried to put one together, had a lot of meetings with the state and so on, but in the end, at that point, they weren't geared up to have private pilots flying disaster missions. They wanted it primarily to be state certified search and rescue pilots. So we had to abandon that at that point, and years later, I heard about this program put together in California based upon the disaster responses using private pilots down there, and they devised a program by Cal pilots called the Disaster Airlift Response Team. And I looked into that, and they gave us permission to use their program and adapt it for our purposes up here. So that was in 2017, and that began the process of developing what is our first DART in the state of Washington here in Clallam County. We wanted to be able to fly our aircraft immediately after a major disaster and not have to wait. If we were flying under the direction of the county emergency manager, we could fly immediately. We operate just like any of the other private DARTs, except each of our members are emergency workers for the state and have a card and are checked out and are part of that system. And so when our pilots and ground crew are responding, they have the additional insurance coverage and liability coverage from the state of Washington. The unique situation we have in Clallam County is that with our 100 miles of county, we have a lot of rivers, and our roads all cross the rivers. We likely will receive the greatest damage. We put these charts together that depict two things. One, they depict the operational areas throughout Clallam County, and an operational area is one that is overseen by a fire district. So we have an incident commander in each operational area who is the fire chief. You can see, for example, Area 2 is an operational area. This area all outlined in pink. Now the key point here is that with all the roads and all the bridges, in a Cascadia level earthquake, it's extremely likely that virtually all, if not most, but perhaps all of those bridges are going to be damaged and not be accessible. So that creates a phenomenon called a micro-island. That means a section of land populated by people that cannot be reached by ground transportation until the roads are, or the bridges are repaired. And that could be weeks or months or longer. Immediately after a major event, the only way to get supplies and personnel in and out of those areas is going to be by aircraft. The Disaster Airlift Response Team is made up of private pilots who donate their time and their expertise and their airplanes to fly these missions in the event of a disaster response. The various areas identified by letters are each of the micro-islands, and these are sections that are totally cut off, except by air or in some cases by water. The water is difficult because the tsunami will move through and do a lot of coastal damage, so we can't be sure how ships could even get in to bring supplies there, but that's one possibility. Here's micro-island A, the west end that's cut off. This whole area B, you see the river, and where the roads go across the river, if they're out, this whole area cannot be reached anyway except by aircraft. And all the way along, Area G, Area F, all of these are defined by rivers that have washed out, and all the folks in here are stranded. The other challenge is, where do the airplanes land? Most of them are fixed wing. They could be helicopters. We have one, and they could land anywhere, but that one helicopter is going to be probably used by emergency management. There are airports that will have to be assessed by flights to see if the airports are serviceable. When a real event comes, we've identified all the possibilities that we can see. When it comes down to it, we're going to make do with whatever we can find.
So there's different agencies that are involved with our group. Air Care Alliance is a national umbrella group, volunteer pilots. They'll do frequent flying of individuals for medical treatment. They'll enable people to get medical care and services they may not otherwise receive. Now in Alaska in 1964, we had a 9.2 earthquake, permanent ground shift up to 39 feet. We haven't had an earthquake of this magnitude in this area for at least 300 years. So the West Coast General Aviation Response Plan coordinates all the local DART teams and the other aviation resources and for any emergency if we need it, but in particular what we're zeroing in on here is the Cascadia Subduction Zone earthquake. The Cascadia Fault is somewhere out here, and all these different colored areas going from the red, orange to yellow, green, blue, purple. See the scale over here from severe to light. So as a health professional, one of my concerns, especially when you've seen the micro islands that Alan had showed here before, is how do we get emergency medical supplies to a person that's in an isolated area where we can't land an aircraft? Some emergency aerial drop tubes. It's a cardboard tube that we purchased, a Kraft 4x18-inch mailing tube. They come with little plastic end pieces, and so we tape these together. So we found that we could use these tubes, cardboard tubes, with the plastic ends, and through experimentation, we found that a heavy-duty duct tape like Gorilla Tape worked really well on the bottom end that's going to hit the ground. And on the top end, we used regular duct tape, and to that we attached a high visibility piece of surveyor tape. And we tested these with two 8-ounce water bottles from 300 to 400 feet down onto the ground. They didn't have a parachute or anything. And other than the duct tape on the bottom getting a little dented, they worked really well. Now, if we had someone out on the west end that had to have insulin, we can put a cold pack inside one of these with the insulin, because those things need to be kept cool. We can fly over the area, depending on the airplane, come over the top, look at the way the wind's blowing, drop the tube, and there you go. These can also be wrapped in bubble wrap, so that you could wrap them up tightly with plastic and bubble wrap and drop them onto a beach where it might be wet, or even on the land if it was kind of a swampy area, drop it like that. So we've accomplished a really neat goal here to be able to deliver these medication to these areas where you just can't land in.
After a full day of flying, I needed some rest. The next day, I would be on a long drive down to Oak Harbor with Ron McCullen to speak with some members who would be handling Thunder Run activities there. And then being picked up by Gary Lingram and his aircraft to go learn more about this Cascadia megaquake and his efforts in helping.
You know, we're so overdue for a major earthquake compared to the rest of the world, and we're sitting on territory that's just primed for it. So it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And because of the geography, there's very few major arteries that go north and south, or east and west for that matter, because we're kind of landlocked. Whether it's Seattle, throughout the Puget Sound actually. And then as far as Whidbey Island, all the San Juan Islands, priority-wise, they're way down on the list for FEMA, because FEMA's going to take care first of the major metropolitan areas, and then they is Ron Conlon, and I'm the Volunteer Aviation Coordinator for Island County. Well, getting involved in disaster-related activities has been something I've done for a couple of decades, and when Sky Terry and I brought the idea to Island County, Eric Brooks, the Department Emergency Manager, was keen on getting something similar set up that's been done throughout the Pacific Northwest. And we started up that program, like I said, about 3 years ago, getting together volunteers. It's orchestrated under the umbrella of CERT, which is a national program and locally here on the island. And that's bringing the volunteers from CERT into the training for the Disaster Airlift Response Team. The Department of Emergency Management here in Island County is very progressive. Not only do they support the DART program, but also they have a program involving boaters called CRAT. And we think that it's going to be a great opportunity for our volunteers and for the citizens of Whidbey, should there be a disaster, that we are somewhat prepared. Obviously, nothing's perfect, but it's going to be a lot more effective when our volunteers will know what to do and what not to do during a crisis.
Well, we know that we live in earthquake country and we're very susceptible to earthquakes, and it can completely devastate our transportation infrastructure. So it's important that we have a lot of different tools in the shed. So these small planes may be the only way that we can get items onto and off of the island until that infrastructure is repaired. We have 2 airports that are participating. One's in Langley, the other one is in Oak Harbor. We have 2 managers that are managing that. We got Christy from Island County Department of Emergency Management that'll be managing operations here in Oak Harbor. And then we have Ron Conlon, who is our DART coordinator that'll be handling things in Langley. And I will be simulating the Emergency Operations Center, collecting information from both airports and arranging resources as needed. It's important that we get the community involved, and our pilots are one of the resources and community members that we haven't utilized so much in the past. So it's nice to finally be getting this off the ground, being able to build these relationships with them now, because we know that in the time of a disaster is not the time to build relationships. So getting all the kinks worked out of something like this, all the logistics worked out, is very important to do that now during training. We have over 50 volunteers that are participating in this particular exercise to help communication and to help move the resources onto and off of the aircraft. So our volunteers are really the backbone of our operations during a disaster. Having that community preparedness is very important.
Our county has a series of obstacles when it comes to earthquakes and any other emergencies. We rely on our bridge and our ferry systems to bring our residents on and off the island, as well as our food resources. So making sure that we've got plans in place and we do the training beforehand in case of an emergency, and then we can be prepared. I will be managing the airport in Oak Harbor for the day, so I will be making sure that the crew runs smoothly, signing documents, overseeing the radio communications, everything like that. I want to add that preparedness is important, so making sure that you're researching the hazards in your area before an emergency so that you and your family can be prepared. And volunteering as well. Getting involved with your community, it can help build up the resiliency for your community.
Completely shut down. And the other road out of here is this one. It's 101 on the eastern part. This is also 101. And all these little black lines are rivers. And there are ancient bridges across each of those rivers. And a major earthquake will destroy all those bridges. And so we really become isolated when the big one comes. There is a major bridge here, Hood Canal Bridge, and it's likely to be damaged to the point of not being useful. And I'm going to show you a video in just a minute. The tsunami, when it happens out here, because the plates, the Juan de Fuca plate and the North American plate that are jamming on each other, when that releases and creates the tsunami, it'll come straight down the Straits of Juan de Fuca, bounce off of Whidbey Island and bounce back into here. And there'll be a 10 to 20 foot high wave the whole way. The whole water level is going to raise up that much.
The whole Olympic Peninsula is potentially to be impacted by a Cascadia megaquake. There is a subduction zone off the Washington and Oregon and British Columbia coasts where the Juan de Fuca plate is overriding or underwriting the North American plate. And the two geologic plates bind on each other, and roughly every 250 to 500 years or so, that binding is released and there's a big movement which creates a massive earthquake, a magnitude 9+ earthquake. And along with that comes a tsunami. But that tsunami, when it comes, will basically isolate the whole peninsula. The main roadways out of here are going to be wiped out either because the bridges that are required to get across rivers or the road itself will be destroyed by the tsunami action. It's very likely that the marinas will have significant damage and not be usable. And so the only real way to get on and off the peninsula after an earthquake like that is likely to be small aircraft. Because of that, a bunch of pilots here at this airport started working with the Jefferson County Department of Emergency Management to set up a process for using general aviation, small personally owned aircraft, to tide over the county's emergency response needs until a federal response is able to provide attention to us. And given the larger communities further out, we may not see help for 4 to 6 weeks after a major event. And so I got involved in this disaster airlift response, partially out of selfish reasons. I want to make sure that my family and the people we know, our neighbors, have access to medicines they need, emergency medical care if that's required and isn't available through other means. And so myself and my aircraft are part of the volunteer program that is able to carry critically injured people out of the area, bring critical aid workers into the area, and bring critical supplies or medicine into the area. And this particular airport, which is behind me, becomes more important because of the geologic formation under the airport. It's a very stable formation and is likely to leave this runway intact even after a major earthquake. And so this may be the lifeblood of the whole peninsula after a major earthquake. Makes perfect sense for the pilots here to be engaged. For the upcoming exercise, middle of this month, we have, I think, 7 aircraft confirmed to be participants, and we're looking forward to it. The airplane I currently have is a MAL MX-7-180. It's a 4-seat, normally a 4-seat aircraft, but the back seat pops out really easily. My airplane has a 1,015-pound useful load. That useful load means I can carry 1,015 pounds, but that includes payload, people, and fuel. And so I have to balance how much payload I have against how much fuel I need to carry for any particular trip. But with the back seat removed from my plane and the front seat removed, I can actually get a stretcher into my aircraft. And so my plane can be used for emergency airlift if there's no other options available for critically injured people that need to get to a hospital outside the area. I can bring in a substantial amount of emergency supplies, whether that be clean water, food, but probably more importantly would be medicine. Being able to bring medicines in for people that don't have access to supplies once normal transportation modes are cut off from the peninsula is pretty critical. So you would think that without having to join something like the Disaster Airlift Response Team, any pilot could take off and fly even after a national disaster. But typically the federal government creates what's called a TFR. It's a temporary flight restriction area around any kind of a natural disaster largely to preclude the emergency response effort from being hindered by people just wanting to take a look and see what's going on. And so if I were not a member of the disaster airlift response team, I would not be able to fly during the disaster or after the disaster. I'd have to wait until everything was cleared, which would mean that I wouldn't be of any help to either my family or my community. By joining DART, I'm able to participate as part of the county's emergency response plan, and my flying activities will be coordinated with federal, state, and county response efforts to make sure it's safe and effective.
After another full day of travel, Mr. Gary dropped me back at Bellingham International so I could rest up for the next day. I would be flying with Doug Weller to go learn about BIFA, their efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic, and how they would be helping in the coming Thunder Run exercise.
My name is Doug Weller. I'm a certified flight instructor here at the Boeing Employees Flying Association here at Renton Field. I've been here with BIFA, we call it, since about 2016, and have been a flight instructor since 2006. I'm also the Disaster Airlift Response Team lead here at this Renton Field hub, which means I manage all of the inbound and outbound flights for the upcoming drill that we're doing here in another week or so. I started flying, training, I guess I should say, back in 2003. I did some commercial flying for a little while, and then I've been instructing since about 2007, I think it is. It's been a long time. And I've been flight instructing here at BIFA since 2016. It kind of started back in the beginning of the pandemic when everything got shut down. You know, everything kind of felt like it had gotten turned inside out. The flying club had gotten shut down. My kids were out of school. They were doing home learning. And I really felt called that I needed to do something. So in the early stages, you know, I was, cutting out fabric squares to make masks for, our local hospitals and local medical staff. But I knew I could do something more. At the time, I was flipping through a flying magazine and stumbled across an article about a pilot in Montana that was delivering medical supplies and PPE to all of the different, rural counties out in the state of Montana, which got me thinking, why can't I do that? I reached out to the Boeing Employees Flying Association management and said, hey, we have this fleet of airplanes, we've got a whole bunch of motivated pilots. What do you guys think about trying to organize some sort of PPE delivery or doing something that we can utilize our airplane fleet, to help out our community? And the reaction was great. They said, go for it. See what you can find out, let us know, we'll figure out how to make it work. Which, began the search. So I reached out to all the state, local, county people to see what was happening, what could we do. I've got this fleet of airplanes, I've got this, group of pilots that want to help, put us to work. What can we do? And I really didn't get any traction because the government itself they were just trying to figure out what they were going to be doing. So to have this, general aviation group try to become involved was, I think, more of a challenge than they were willing to take on at the time. So I didn't really get much traction there. I then decided, I went back to the article that I had read, and I figured out that the guy was working with the Montana State Hospital Association. So I thought to myself, we've got to have one of those here. So to the interwebs I went and found the Washington State Hospital Association. And they have a rural hospital director. So I reached out to Jacqueline Barton True, and said, hey, I work with this flying club, we have airplanes, do you guys have any involvement in distributing PPE to any of your, hospitals? And a very serendipitous thing happened. They were about to receive well over 1 million masks, from overseas. The challenge they had was they didn't necessarily have a planned out method of delivering all of this material to their rural hospitals. which is where we came in. We worked out a logistical plan with their people. We put together a group of pilots that were willing to volunteer their time and money and load up these airplanes and fly pretty much all over the state. We did that for a good 2 to 3 months, and I think in the end we ended up delivering I want to say over 500,000 masks via airplane to all of their hospital network. So the DART group has created a system where in the event of a large-scale disaster, general aviation pilots will come together and deliver anything really that's needed on these counties that are now isolated due to all of the ground infrastructure being decimated by a large-scale earthquake. That's the original intent of DART. With the pandemic happening, it kind of shined a light on a greater need in the community where things like PPE, moving medical personnel. We did sandbag deliveries when the northern part of the state was underwater due to flooding. We've done things like organizing dog rescues out of Mexico. All kinds of other things like that have come to the forefront of what we can do as a pilot group that we didn't really think about prior to the pandemic. So the Thunder Run drill is going to involve nearly 100 pilots from Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, all the way up into British Columbia. This drill is all about moving material. So we're doing a cargo airlift that's going to bring 30,000 pounds of cargo into the Bellingham Airport and another, I think it's 25,000 pounds of cargo or 30,000 pounds of cargo over into the Walla Walla Airport. For this group, for the Renton DART group, we are going to be managing the arrival of 17,000 pounds of that material into this airport. And then that material, 10,000 pounds of it is going to be shipped out via general aviation pilots to the Shelton Airport over in Sanderson Field over in Shelton and Bowerman Field out in Hoquiam. And all of this food is going to be sent to local food banks in each individual location, including Northwest Harvest here in Seattle. But the goal of this whole operation is to see how much material the general aviation community alone can move in a short period of time. 60,000 pounds of material being moved by small single-engine airplanes it's a pretty significant operation, and it's going to take pretty much everybody that we've got working on it all day to get that much material moved. Well, unfortunately, I will be on the ground during the whole event as the DART lead here in Renton. I need to manage the inbound and outbound flights that are coming in from Walla Walla, being unloaded, organizing that cargo, and then reloading onto the short haul flights that are going over to Sanderson Field and Bowerman Field. So sadly, I don't get to participate in the flying side of things. I get to work with all the ground crews here on the field. So we'll have a Civil Air Patrol crew that will be handling all of the marshaling as airplanes come in, getting them parked, getting a crew to unload, and then we'll be tracking each individual flight as it comes over the hill via ham radio, so we know when they're going to arrive, who's arriving, what their load's going to be, so we can have things prepped for when they land and get them turned around as quick as possible. It's in part of my personality, I think, that I want to be part of a solution versus part of a problem, I guess was one way to put it. I work with a tremendous group of people here at BIFA. They all have big hearts. They all want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity for this organization itself to, help out the community, do something more than just, fly these airplanes around and, and drill holes in the sky. This gives us a chance to really benefit, hard-hit communities. So when something really disastrous does happen, we have a system, we have people ready, we know what to do when that happens. So having this group of pilots and group of airplanes available and being ready to take off at a moment's notice, it's a pretty good feeling that that this organization is willing to step up to the plate during a pretty significant time of need. That could happen at any time.
Well, BIFA is kind of an adjunct to Boeing. Its mission statement is continuing education, transportation, recreation, and kind of job identification for the various Boeing employees. Take advantage of. It's a not-for-profit. We're not a charity, but we're a 501c4. So any of the flight revenues get put back into the operation for the enhancement of the operation. Well, it's a mission that I think we've all, over the years, have tried to formulate with other disaster relief organizations, and we're trying to take advantage of the skill sets that we have here. BIFA is really unique in the talent that we have here. We have everything from instructor pilots that are astronauts, test pilots, to just full-time career high-time piston engine pilots that are instructors, and a broad base of other pilots that are very talented that want to be able to contribute to a natural disaster. And the advantage with the light planes over the jets is that we can focus into getting into areas that are very difficult to access from a time standpoint. So if you have a disaster and you start having vehicles that are going to take a day trip all the way to get to a remote town, Colville, Forks, smaller towns, but have airports we can drop off the supplies that are needed with an airplane in a matter of a few hours, whereas it'd be a day trip for a truck to get there, drop it off, and maybe even another day to get back. The vehicles, the truck ground vehicles, can then focus on the main I-5 corridors, the I-90 corridors, and distribute it to where the bulk of the population is, which would be more efficient. And we kind of get the outliers so they're not forgotten. It feels good. Something out of our norm. We mainly do an awful lot of flight training, boosting other people's careers. Maybe some people, their jobs are tangential with aviation, obviously, and this gives them a pilot perspective, and that can enhance their jobs. Well, this is more direct outreach to the community, which is really a major focus of our operation as well. It doesn't get advertised that much, so to speak, but yeah, we really enjoy being able to support these types of missions, and if and when the time comes that we're able to execute them and contribute our skill set, which is unique to making more efficient distribution of the assets that are needed. I think the ground support is as important as being able to get the pilots up and delivering the equipment, and it makes it more efficient, makes it faster, and helps expedite it. So reach out to your local community organizers and government organizers and get involved, because it's many hands make light work, as they say, and when a disaster hits, everybody pitching in it is going to resolve a lot of the issues sooner than later, and hopefully people will get inspired to do so before the disaster happens, and are properly trained to be able to deal with it. And that's essentially what we're doing, and what Doug's setting up here is getting the people trained so that if and when this happens, and I think we all agree eventually it is going to happen, the people are trained and ready to go, and that's going to save an awful lot of time.
Okay, well, my name is Bob Ingersoll. I've been a long-time BIFA member. I am currently president of the board of the Boeing Employees Flying Association, and have been in that capacity for about 6 years. BIFA is tied to Boeing through our bylaws. We have an organization that's made up of about 400 members, and we have 20 planes, both here at Renton Airport and at Payne Field. And our goal is to develop and promote general aviation flying for Boeing employees, retirees, family members, and guest members. And we've been doing this for over 60 years. So it's not something that's new to us, and part of that is not only flight training and enjoyment, but it's also community service. And through the community service aspect, we like to work with the community to support various projects, one of them being the DART program. Well, this is not new to us. We have supported previous initiatives. During the COVID aspect, we moved PPE type equipment throughout the state to rural areas, and so it's just kind of evolved from that in terms of what can we do for the community. Besides those types of initiatives, we also provide scholarship ground school training for our Renton High School community, which has been ongoing for a couple of years now. And it's just about us being a part of the overall greater Renton and Painfield aviation community. Well, we look at it as an opportunity, as I've just kind of outlined. It's going to be a challenge because of the scope and magnitude of it. And Doug Weller, our leader on this, has got a lot of experience and got a great plan, and we intend it to be successful from our aspect. It's going to be a very busy weekend for us, but I think we're going to be prepared for it.
The day has finally come. It's June 18th, 2022, and it's time for Thunder Run.
We're going to be handing them safety vests. I'll give you all the vests after this morning's orientation, because you're going to participate in the parking lot orientation this morning, right? You're going to shuttle people over, you're going to stay. Does that work for you? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Then, do you feel like you have any limitations today that might inhibit your ability to help? Can you carry repetitively 10 pounds? Can you carry repetitively 20 pounds? Can you carry repetitively 30 pounds? Okay, we're taking everybody through that. We're going to have them all step over and make a line, and that's how we're going to be aware of who does what.
And then we're going to be at, basically, when it comes to the high wing or low wing planes in general, you're going to approach from the side, not the front. Never touch the prop. Never touch anything that's pointy. If we hear an all clear, or clear the deck, that means everyone comes back to here, because you're going to probably launch 3 or 4 planes at once, doing a group launch. So you just need to get clear of the tarmac. If you're near a plane and you're already starting to load, and it comes across the FRS radios that we're asking you to, all clear, clear the deck. You stay at the plane, or you stay here. If you're somewhere in between, get to the plane or get to here, but don't just be milling around, because you're going to launch like 3 or 4 planes at one time. We're not always going to do that, but we will probably run into situations like that, especially with the way this weather is. Never touch the prop. Don't go near the prop. The prop will eat you, so stay away from the front. We are going to have, that's called a Lake Ranger. Those 2 amphibians back there, we are going to have one of those working from our site. The thing to remember is the propeller in that case is in that big top part above the plane. So in this case, that is one of the rare times, if you see one of those amphibians, you actually do want to approach from the front or the side, because the propeller is on the back and it's high, so it's right at head height. We only have 1 plane. Everyone else is like a high wing or low wing, and you just approach from the sides. The pilot will load the planes. Really just don't touch a plane unless the pilot gives you specific directions to do so in terms of load in, but most of the time the pilots are going to do it themselves. We just need you to manage the piles, get it from the pile to the plane, or get it from the plane to the pile when the Canadians start dropping loads. All right? I'm the head of it, and so is Bob Weeks. We're the ones that will be on the tarmac. We have our evac shirts. As the weather gets better, we have the evac, so that's me and Bob. That's how the guy in the gray cap have those shirts. We're the ones leading it. We also are the ones that have 3 different radios. So that we're in charge. Come to us if there's an issue, and then we'll work it through. Okay? This is the pilot manifest. Every plane that leaves here has to have this filled out. And just remind the pilot that my number is on here. 14,000. Good. Because I need a text picture when he gets to the final drop point of the person signing it that he gave the food to. This is our paper trail to make sure you know where everything went. Okay? There you go. Oh. That's okay.
Oh yeah, that's condensation from the water.
I know, but it's making a tiny river in it.
So when we lose all the roads, that's what you're gonna do. This is how stuff is gonna get into our airport. This is how we support Washington County and how we support other counties. But all this is food that's gonna go right into the food bank at all the receiving ends from here. Plus we get about 5,000 that's gonna come out of Canada and we get to keep.
That's a pro right there.
Yeah.
Hey Bob, is Ty in there or is he?
Yeah, he's in here.
Oh, is he?
The pilot's right over here. He said he's gonna go inside.
Go inside.
That means he's gonna be here.
Nearing the end of the exercise, I was introduced to Mr. Sigmund, another pilot. Mr. Sigmund will be flying me over to Point Roberts, a very small part of the U.S. that was isolated during the COVID-19 pandemic. Here, I will be introduced to the company Aero, the fire chief, and a few members of the emergency staff that all came together to keep their small community going during that rough time, and their part in the Thunder Run exercise.
Well, my name is Sigmund Sort. I'm with Aero BC, and Aero stands for Airlift Emergency Response Operations, and I'm the Chief Preparedness Officer. Aero had a natural beginning born out of the floods and landslide disasters in British Columbia, Canada in November of 2021. And some highways, Highway 8 for instance, was severed in 21 locations and probably won't even be rebuilt. But in those early days, there was a call out to pilots, general aviation pilots, to step up and help somehow, some way. And I was part of that landscape of pilots just answering the call, rescuing people, moving them from one community that was severed off from another community, pets included. And eventually I learned of Sean Bradley Heaps, who was running a group out of Langley Airport in Canada. And I quickly joined him and his group and got to know Sean well. And our adventure turned into a 60-day effort. We flew over 400,000 pounds of goods and over 60 days. And I can't remember how many hundreds of flights we flew as a unit, but one pilot flew 77 missions, I flew 49, and we realized we had to formalize and become an entity, a not-for-profit volunteer general aviation community, and we came up with the name Aero to help service future disasters, be it floods, earthquakes, forest fires, or what have you. When we were flying the floods in British Columbia in late 2021, Sky Terry made himself known to Sean Heaps, our president of Aero. And Sean Heaps let us know that this Operation Thunder Run was coming up in 2022, and the Americans wanted the Canadian contribution and make it an international event. We knew from our firsthand experience in British Columbia that emergencies know no borders. The landslides and earthquakes don't care about country borders. They end up giving a result that people are in need wherever they are. And air resources are limited, both sides of the border, and it's important that the aviation community come together and service each other's needs in times of an emergency. And we were thrilled that we were invited, and we just knew it was an incredibly important thing to do, because we too, north of the 49, are going to need help from south of 49. It's really one aviation community from our vantage point. And so in order to grow Aero, in order to prepare the Pacific Northwest to deal with forest fire season, earthquakes, or flood season, whatever the situation, we knew that we needed to get involved and help be part of that solution, irrespective of the Canada-US border. Yes, there are probably more stories than even I'm aware of. Sean Heaps had a vision of creating the ongoing entity so that there would be an emergency response organization in perpetuity serving British Columbians and beyond. Sky Terry had that vision even earlier, south of 49, creating the emergency efforts south of 49. And neither entity is trying to reinvent the wheel. So while Sky Terry and his team was well ahead in terms of annual practices, they watched with some amazement, I would say, is what we heard, with what we came together and handled it in British Columbia. So we got to fly sort of what they call a big book exercise for real, where south of 49, they haven't flown the Big X yet, but they're certainly learning from us as much as we're learning from them. So it's a symbiotic relationship. We're building each other's organizations deeper and stronger, and it's going to make general aviation a much more dependable, reliable, repeatable entity to call on in times of need. Well, our slogan at Aero is same day, next day response. And certainly Sky Terry and his organization, South of 49, can pull that off as well. In these exercises, I'm flying my personal aircraft, and I donate my time and the cost of it and everything to Aero and to Thunder Run. It's a 1976 fully restored, mint condition Cessna 172 and Skyhawk 2. And it has a all-up weight of only 2,300 pounds. They're a Cessna aircraft throughout North America. Everybody knows what they are. So I can carry 400 to 500 pounds worth of goods, depending on what the load and so forth is. And every bit helps. Certainly in the floods in British Columbia, when you get to meet the people who are on the receiving end of the goods that you're flying in to help their severed community when they're running out of eggs, they're running out of milk, they have no juice, they need water because the system's failed. And you see them melt in front of your eyes, and you see them cry and stuff. It's an incredible, powerful human core experience that tells you unequivocally you're in the right place, doing the right thing, helping people in critical need. And that is what really has me committed to Arrow and ongoing, and committed to helping the Pacific Northwest with Skye Terry, Sean Heaps, really just have a robust emergency response organization. Really important. And one of the things I did during the floods was, I typically didn't, but I started posting on social media. And for me, I wanted other general aviation pilots to really see what Sean Heaps was putting together in Langley, and then we learned of what Skye Terry had been doing in the Pacific Northwest. And I really wanted to get that out there far and wide, because as much as we might have a strong response in a fairly small circle in the Pacific Northwest in terms of general aviation aircraft, I wanted other communities that have assets and skill sets to be aware that they too can step up and respond to emergencies in their sector, whether they're in northeastern BC or southeastern Washington state. It doesn't matter where you are as a general aviation pilot, you are valuable, your assets are invaluable to other people in need if you only step up and are willing to contribute the time and cost that it takes to help others.
So the last 2 years obviously have been very difficult for Point Roberts. Because of the border situation, and our influx pretty much went down to 0% during the pandemic. We rely heavily on our international influx from our Canadian neighbors to the north, and when the borders got shut down, it disproportionately affected this community, really probably beyond any other communities other than Lake of the Woods, Minnesota, maybe Hyder, Alaska as well, but it truly devastated us. So exercises like this, to where we start planning and we practice for a Cascadia event, a large earthquake, these events are realistically invaluable to my community. Everything relies on us being able to continue getting food, water supplies, medical equipment as well, to serve the community outside of what the state may be able to bring in a couple weeks to a month later in such a disaster. So having and knowing that we have these resources available to us and being able to participate at this level is something that is bringing value to my agency as emergency services providers, but also the other responders and the volunteers within our communities, such as PrEP, our CERT teams, the clinic, food bank as well. We all have to be involved to make sure that our community survives an earthquake or Cascadia event. It's all about preparing for a large earthquake, and that's something that's very prominent, would be a huge disaster for us, not only for Point Roberts being 5 square miles below the 49th parallel. Kind of a gem is what we are known as here. We are one of the safest places during the pandemic. I believe right now we only had 126 positive COVID cases that came through our clinics, and we've had about 8,000 people tested in our community, and about 80% of our community is fully vaccinated as well. So being able to work out these solutions prior to an event will make any type of disaster response more successful if that time comes. Well, Point Roberts is unincorporated Whatcom County, and we're on the 49th parallel. We were established back in, I believe, in 1846. And since then, we've been 5 square miles of the United States. We're the furthest, as far as I know, northwest location of the contiguous lower 48. And it's something that we're tied to the Vancouver, British Columbia metro area very closely. So even though we have a border, we have Customs and Border Patrol here. We also have CBSA, which is the Canadian Border Services. Even though we have a border here, we're so closely tied to our friends, our loved ones, our neighbors that live across the border to the north, that this community is very well mixed. And we come together during this pandemic. I believe we met the definition of community. We had, people helping people that have never even thought of helping individuals before. And everybody came together and helped us get through this last 2 years of this pandemic. And exercises like this bring the importance of the definition of community. And having everybody come together, meeting new people within our teams, our CERT teams, our PrEP teams, and other volunteer groups within the community, making sure everybody's on the same page. Again, that's invaluable to our response and our capability when a disaster happens. Sure, we're always looking for volunteers. We are a very unique organization that we have close to 30 volunteers that come in from our northern border because we don't have the demographics within our community, the age groups that usually want to spend time becoming a firefighter or an emergency medical responder, getting state certified as an EMT or advanced EMT. So we're always looking for volunteers and for people to step up and be part of our prep teams, our CERT teams. Always having new influx is good, new ideas as well, and learning how to work together as a group, coming together as a community during a disaster, during a pandemic like we've had the last 2 years. Again, that's extremely valuable, and anybody that would like to help us or think about becoming a volunteer within our community here, you're welcome to reach out to my office, reach out to the prep groups, reach out to our CERT team. We're probably accept you with open arms and let you start serving the community in a volunteer capacity.
Of two nations. And good thing we're friends and neighbors and at peace.
Makes a difference.
They worked really hard as entities each to try and make Thunder run really efficiently. So my hat's off to Jennifer Zales of the U.S. Border Protection Port Authority here. And hats off to Oliver Ankel on the Canadian side for opening up a blanket landing. No need to get a code. Come on in, give us a call, we'll get you on your way. The hiccup for us north of 49 is the southbound EAPIS. There's no question that when something happens, if the United States doesn't waive the need for an EAPIS, it's going to be just as hard and it's going to slow things down to get help here. But we'll come anyway, like we did today.
Yes, it awesome.
And we're getting better at it. It's our first time coming to the United States of America. It's our first time as a team doing a Big X. It's our first time for some of the pilots. They were just registered for EAPIS this last month and have never used it until today. So there's a lot of growth, incredible growth north of 49. So if we were to go do this again, we're going to come at it more experienced, more knowledgeable. And I look forward to working with Jennifer Zales and Oliver Ankel on both sides of the border about lessons learned, what it is to help each other across the border. And I'm hoping that each entity realizes that liberal treatment, and still come and look at us, but liberal treatment helps things flow.
Yeah.
If you really want to drop roadblocks and really, put an impediment to an emergency response, just, throw the rule book around. That didn't happen today.
If there was any hole anywhere that anybody perceived, they were very, very quick to find a way to plug that hole and make things work. Now, that was one big thing that I think was important. The other is the fact that folks worked together so well. Even the kids, coming in and everything, you could see they were happy, they were communicative, they enjoyed each other's company. And passed tasks back and forth really well. Adults and kids all performed admirably, so it pleases me an awful lot to see that these exercises work and are very important and people get an awful lot out of them. Going back 35 years, back to 1987 when we started EVAC, and then 1990 when we began the Air Care Alliance, where we pooled the work of 60 different volunteer pilot organizations and encouraged them to also develop emergency preparedness programs within their mission, which was mostly patient transport, but also transporting animals from kill shelters to, live shelters, and so on and so forth. There have been an awful lot of lessons over the years. And your example is just incredible in terms of building on that and creating an effort and a network of relationships, which is going to be very, very important here one day. Maybe a month from now, maybe 30 years from now, but as this builds, it's going to become more and more important. My hat is off to all of you.
But again, like you said, we ran into some problems and we just worked around them, adapted, overcame, and I think we did well. We learned a ton. Every time we do this, we learn a ton. And okay, now we got to look into doing this. Now we got to learn how to do this. That's just the way we do. But I agree. That's what makes it fun for me, is the cooperation, the work that everybody just works together and you know, if we get a problem, we fix it. And it's kind of fun doing that too. I'm amazed at the pilots.
Their own money.
That's what I'm amazed at that. We were talking, you know, I look at the cost of avgas and I go, it's amazing you could get 3 people to do this.
$10 a gallon.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's just amazing, and that always impresses me.
And we definitely use gas because we ran AJ Eisenberg dry. We emptied out their gas tank. We ran an airport dry.
Yeah.
Look for the NOTAM.
You're right. It's really amazing to know that it works.
Thanks for everything you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll make a difference when the time comes. Yeah. Thank you. Cool. That's it.
All right.
Yeah.
See you all
Thank you
soon.
so much.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I couldn't have